Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to the shop. Today we are going to be making a tool tote. Now this may seem a little bit basic, but I want to actually build a project that is very simple but has a lot of intricacies and different things to try. So we're going to be doing this with angled dovetails, we're going to be doing some wood bending, we're going to be creating grooves, we're going to be creating stopped dados, we're going to be resawing the bottom on this, as well as putting pinned handles, and on top of all of that, this is built without any glue at all. So it's a really nice, good beginner's project, and we're going to be having a little bit of fun with this. So let's dive in and make ourselves a tool tote. I wanted this project to be something that anyone could do, so I just went to the local big box store and I picked up a 1x4 and a 1x6, 4 foot long on both of them. They're out of aspen, but basically any wood you want, whether they be pine or red oak or maple or whatever you have, that's all you're going to need. 2 boards, 4 foot long. One is a 1x6 and one is a 1x4. So if you go and buy these now, if you want to follow along when we do the live video, I will have the plans available in the link down below in the description, and we'll be going by this. So the first thing I need to do is cut the 1x4 perfectly in half, or I want 2 boards that are 24 inches long. So I should be able to get that out minus the saw curve. In this case, I got 2 that were exactly 24 inches long. And I just want to make sure that they are precisely the same length, square on the ends, and ready to go. Next thing I want to do is figure out what angle I want these side walls of this to be. Now, a lot of people like one to be angled and one to be straight. I wanted to make both of them angled just for the fun of it. So I chose an angle that looked about right, that one, and then I jointed down one edge of the 1x4 to match it. Unfortunately, all the video footage from that disappeared, so I'm not quite sure where that went, but we'll be covering that when we get to the live video. Once we get that board cut with one edge jointed to that angle, we can start laying out the end boards. These come out of the 1x6. And on this board, we're just going to cut whatever that angle is we chose across, and then figure out how wide we want the box to be. And then when we cut one end off, we can then rotate the piece and get the second one out of it. So we only have to cut that angle 3 times, even though we're making 2 pieces. That way you can match one to the other and draw that over. And if I'm going too fast on this, or there's anything else you want to see, we will be going through this completely step by step in the live build series to come here soon. So I find it much easier to lay it flat and then cut it as opposed to cutting it vertically. Just clean it up nicely, get a clean, smooth edge on there so that we're ready for the dovetails. Now, the dovetail cutting on this, even though they are splayed angles, look really, really confusing, and they look like they're going to be a difficult thing. They are just regular dovetails, and so there is nothing really to think out about this other than cutting dovetails. And we'll be going into this with a good bit of detail as well, so that it's a way to make dovetails look impressive, but not be any more difficult than regular dovetails. So here we're just going to be cutting our regular dovetails. I'm choosing an angle, something around that, cutting it down. I'm not even using a guide or any gauge to mark out what I want. I'm just choosing something that is nice to my eye. Trim them up and clean them up. It's very important that all of the dovetail shoulders be perfectly at 90 degrees to the face. So I'm going to use a file to clean them up and detail them in. Next thing I want to do is cut the angles for the tops of the 2 sides. This is not necessary, but it just makes them look a little bit better. And so we're going to be doing some connect the dots on the angles, and then cut off these little wings on the other side. And so we'll be left with this 6-sided shape with dovetails on 2 of the sides. It's kind of a detailed, funny looking thing. But once you see it all done, it makes sense how this all comes together. And again, if you want to see it in greater detail, I have plans linked down below. Go through all of the dovetails and trim them up. Make sure that they're nice and smooth and shiny, and we will be ready for the transferring the marks to the pins. Once we have the marks transferred to the pins, we can cut them down basically the exact same as we would cut dovetails, the dovetail side. And it is very important when you cut these down to mark the waist you want taken out. I actually like to put a number all the corners, and then I put that number on each of those blocks. So when the blocks come out, then I can transfer the number to the inside of the joint. So you'll never see the number, but it allows me to know that corner 2 goes with corner 2, corner 3 goes with corner 3. So you can pop those out, and then I'm going to immediately mark inside so I know which one goes with which one. And test the fit. And as always, most dovetails need a little bit of coaxing, This one I just need to come in and trim out a few things, then hit it with a file to smooth out those edges a little bit, and we'll get a nice tight fit all the way across this. So you can see how these splayed ends then go onto the two sides. Next thing you want to do is cut the groove for the bottom to go in this. Now the bottom is actually going to be made out of the 1x6. We're going to resaw that down and make two panels, glue them together, and make a 1/4 inch thick panel. It's actually going to be a little bit thicker than 1/4 inch, but the grooves are going to be 1/4 inch because we're going to be pillowing the bottom to fit into the grooves to give you a nice, tight, clean fit. So here is the 1x6. We're going to use a marking gauge that's close to the middle, and then I'm going to mark it from both sides of the board. This way I have two parallel lines running down, and this gives me a guide. I can put the saw right in the middle of those two lines, or kind of splitting the difference on the two lines. Now we're going to be talking about resawing in detail here. This is something that really scares a lot of people, and I want to make this a simple project that anyone can do. And so if you understand a few basic things about resawing, most anyone can do this in a matter of a few minutes, especially with something like aspen. It cuts really easily, and it's a simple wood. If you have something like a walnut or a cherry, it's very, very easy as well. Oak may be a little bit more difficult because the grain structure causes the blade to follow more. But with a little bit of time and some patience, you can resaw a board into two boards. The nice thing about this is you can then put the two together, joint them nice and flat and true, and then glue these two to give yourself one nice solid wood panel for the bottom. I'm using my favorite wooden beam clamps. I have several videos on these. I have a video series where we actually go into building these from the making the hardware as well, if you want to see that. They're nothing special. They're not necessary. They're just fun. I'm using the 4/4 glue because I was a little bit pressed for time in the glue up. This is nice because it goes together very, very quickly, and it sets up, and you can work on it in just a little bit longer. It's kind of what the professionals use so that they can go through panels very, very quickly. Now that we have our panel, we're going to set that aside. We're going to start working on the handle while it glues up. I'm going to be making a frame so we can bend the handle. So this I did a bunch of testing on, and I ended up actually making the frame, and I have plans for this as well, showing how to do this so that the frame can actually be made out of a simple 2x4. I'm doing it out of a scrap piece of maple countertop that I had because I wasn't sure where to put the sizes and all that, and so this was kind of figuring it out on my end. I'm going to be using some 1-inch dowel as pegs, and I'm going to bend it around these pegs. So we drill 1-inch holes, drive in 1-inch dowels, and this will give us our frame that we can then bend the boards to. So fairly easy, but you can see they're not going to bend when they're dry. So we're going to soak them overnight. Actually, I ended up soaking them for a couple days, just putting them in a tube and letting them absorb as much water as possible. And then when it came time, we can boil the water. So I have a pot that we can boil all the water up to as close to boiling as we possibly can, and then dump it in. Let it sit in there for 30 to 40 minutes, and it will be ready to bend. Now, on my first test, which is actually what we're videoing here, I snapped the piece. I did not let it boil long enough. On future ones, I came up with a system that works really well, and it was what I was basically talking through. And I tried it with poplar, I tried it with oak, and all of them really came out nicely. I didn't have anything break after I figured out what the process was. So now we have our bent handle. Now we can put this together and figure out how these holes need to go through. Now they need to go through at an angle, so we need to find what is that angle. The bevel gauge will give you something pretty darn close to accurate. It doesn't have to be dead on, just get it as close as it can. And then mark in either of the end boards exactly where the hole needs to go through. Now this is where a lot of people get frightened, is they want to know how do they actually go about drilling a hole at that angle. And that's really simple. You just set up the bevel gauge and you eyeball it. You don't need to be dead on perfectly within a 1/10 of a degree. You just need to be close enough. And once you get your hole through there, we're going to do a little bit of clean out because it was a little bit fuzzy in this. Grab a rat tail file, smooth it out, and we can test the dowel. Once I have the holes in place, we can find out exactly how long to cut the dowel. On one end, I'm just cutting off a little bit, and on the other end, I'm cutting off a little bit more. Just eyeballing it to length, not getting anywhere close. The hole I drilled for the handles to go in was actually a little bit smaller than the dowel, so I used a card scraper to make the dowel a little bit thinner, give me a very, very tight fit, and I was very pleased with it. You want it to be able to slide in because it has to slide in on both ends, but you want it to be a snug fit that's not going to be wiggling around too much. And so we can do that. Now we can put the two ends, drive the handle into place, and you can kind of see how the shape of this is coming up. Next thing we need to do is put the pins into the handle. These will be pins that hold the handle in place and actually hold the whole box together. And with these pins, you don't need any glue because these pins will keep the two ends from coming off. And with dovetails, the sides won't come off. And so with these pins, you don't need any glue for this project. And that's what makes it a little bit fun whenever you can use some pins. Now that we drilled holes on there, we can bring the panel out and smooth it down. I want to bring one side really nice and smooth, and this will be the side that is facing up on the bottom of the bottom. I want to square up the ends. I could do it on a shooting board, but I actually find it a little bit easier to put it in the vise and go across it. Checking to make sure everything nice and square, and then we're going to pillow the top. Because this top is like 3/8 of an inch thick, I'm going to pillow the side down so that it has an angle that will fit into the groove, giving me a nice snug tight fit. We'll be talking about that a little bit more in the live video. Next thing I want to do is actually cut off a little piece of this lengthwise, because one chunk of it is going to be a divider we'll be putting inside, and then the other half will be the bottom for it. This is set up so some people really like having a divider in there, some people don't. So I wanted to show how to put the divider in there. If you don't want the divider, well then you just don't have the divider. But yeah, now we can joint up that edge that we just cut off. Make sure it comes right down to our line, and then pillow all those corners so that they have a nice fit into the groove that we created into the ends and the sides. Slide it down to place, put on the top, and make sure that we have a good fit on the bottom. Now the next thing we want to do is figure out where we're going to put the divider. So in the divider, we're going to have a groove that goes into the bottom and then dados that go into either end. But I want to actually trim this down to exactly 1/4 inch. The whole thing is about 3/8, but one side is rough because that was the side that we resawed on. So we still have those saw marks we can take off. And I needed to take off that 1/8 inch or so to bring it down to exactly 1/4 inch. There's nothing that says it has to be 1/4 inch. I just want to bring it close to that. Now this is the bottom of the tote. We're actually going to cut a really shallow 1/16 inch deep or so groove for the bottom to fit into. And then we can transfer those marks onto the end, where we can then put in dados. This will let that divider then fit into either end. So it will fit 1/4 inch into either end and a 1/16 inch down into the bottom. Once we've marked out exactly where those dados need to be, we can come in and trim it out and clean it out. And this is actually a lot of fun. Cutting dados is one of those very enjoyable things. Once you get it down, it's like, ooh, this is great. I got to do more of this. But again, we'll be covering this in more detail. If this is something that scares you, don't worry about it. We will be making it very easy and very simple that anyone at any stage can follow along. So now that we have all the pieces done, we can fit it into place and make sure everything is good. For the two pins, I chose a little bit of walnut. I had a small piece of 1/4 inch dowel. Walnut dowel, and so I thought that would be kind of nice. Tap it all down together, and then we can put in our pins. I slide the handle to one side to make it easier to drive in the first pin, and then I can flip it over and pound the handle down towards the other side, and that will give me just the clearance I need to get the pin in on the other side. And we can drive that in nice and flush, and there we go. It's done, and I am happy with this. So if you want to build along, we have plans available down below. You can go and buy the boards you need right now so that you can start building it. We will be bringing this to a Tuesday. I'm not sure if we'll do it this Tuesday or next, so stay tuned for that. We'll be letting you know as soon as this project comes out. I hope you like this. This is going to be a fun one to play through. So there you have it, a tool tote. This is a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to actually be doing a series coming here soon on the live videos, which if you don't go to the lives, they happen every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time, and we're live here in the shop, usually talking through a particular skill or topic, and it's a good chance to do question and answer. So if you have anything particular you want to do, you can come in for that. But for the live video, we're actually going to take this step by step for a full series over the course of a month or so, and we're going to document each thing. So we're going to have an hour-long live video where we'll be working on dovetails, another one working on resawing, another one working on bending, another one on cutting the grooves. And we'll actually take this whole thing step by step so that you can follow along. And if you want to, you can actually get the plans. There's a link to those down below. And you can follow along the live and build with me in your shop. And if you have any questions while you're doing it, you can throw them up on the chat, and we can actually answer your questions live as you build this, as I build this. So this one is my prototype. I'm going to be building another one as we do it live. And I do have the plans available now down in the description. So I hope you like this. This was a fun one for me, and I always like simple projects like this that look relatively simple, but there's a lot of intricacies in them that make them something more fun. And so if you are trying to find a good project to learn something or to increase your skills and try something a little different, this might be a good one for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas, and comments down below. Let me know those. So I think that's about it for today. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Tote.
This is a totally awesome video.
Ooh, whenever you make a woodworking tote, you know that it is totally awesome. Cool. Second channel.